Hello again, and welcome back to the Elise Richmond Show. I'm sitting here right now with a gentleman that I have just met, and I can't wait to interview him. His name is Warren Duffy, and he is the co-founder of CFACT, Southern California Division, correct?
Absolutely.
Tell us what that's all about, Mr. Duffy.
Well, CFACT is an organization that's headquartered in Washington, D.C., and primarily involved with national and international environmentalism. When we found out about Assembly Bill 32, we have been in contact with the fellows back east, and we said, hey, you're talking about theory. We're talking about the reality of what's happening now out here where the liberal rubber meets the road in California.
Absolutely, in California, yes.
So they authorized us to start the very first state chapter of their organization. And that's why it's CFACT, SoCal.
Okay.
We're focusing right here on how all of this environmental agenda is hitting us between the eyes. And primarily, our emphasis is on cap and trade.
There you go, cap and trade, the good old cap and trade. Tell us about California cap and trade and how that fits in with all of this United Nations Agenda 21.
Sure. In 2006, our state legislature passed something called the California Global Warming Solutions Act.
Right away, I don't like that. Global warming, right away. It's not anything I can believe in.
Globe hasn't been warming for 14 years.
Thank you.
It's an inconvenient truth. We'll get to more of those in a little bit. But in 2006, they passed this, and I started hearing about it from my friends in the business world in 2007. So we started investigating, and here was within this bill passed by our state legislature, written by Fabio Nunez.
Oh,
who is
he's
a
one of my
name that-
faves, let me tell you.
absolutely,
Whoa, whoa.
And signed by Governor Schwarzenhousekeeper.
Schwartz and Housekeeper.
Yes.
That's a good name for him.
And it became law, and I started to check into it, and it had some very significant elements. We're going to reduce pollution levels by the year 2020 to where they were in 1990. I thought, I read that somewhere before. And then the second one was, well, we're going to identify 4 greenhouse gases, CO2, methane, and on and on. And I thought, I've read that someplace before. And then the third one was cap and trade. Suddenly the light bulb went on, and there was Agenda 21.
You connected it up.
The
yes.
3 elements in our Global Warming Solutions Act, which was enacted as Assembly Bill 32. So we've got AB 32, and now all of a sudden here it is, 6 years later, and most people don't realize, because the mainstream media isn't telling us.
That's true.
Thank goodness for your program.
Thank you so much.
But here we have, beginning in January of this year, we implemented the cap part of cap and trade. So there are about 600 businesses in our state that right now have their pollution levels capped. On the 15th of August, we're going to have our first sale of carbon credits. And it's shattering when you stop and think that our governor just went on television 3 weeks ago and said, well, the first $1 billion that comes in from our carbon auctions, where's that $1 billion coming from? It's coming from you and I.
Exactly.
The first $1 billion that's coming in, and what did he say he was going to commit it to? The bullet train to nowhere.
The bullet train to nowhere is another project that I've done a little research in, and that's absolutely insane.
It is the first phase of it. I call it the Moonbeam Express.
It's the Moonbeam Express.
Named
That's
after
a good one, let me
Governor
tell
Moonbeam,
you.
the Moonbeam Express.
Ah.
The first phase of it, as it's envisioned, is that it will start in Madera. And if
Okay.
you think Palm Springs is hot, Madera is as hot as Death Valley. It's a grape growing region. They have about 40,000 people who live in Madera. It will go down about 130 miles to Corcoran. The thriving
Corcoran.
metropolis of Corcoran. There's 60,000
Okay.
people in Corcoran. Unfortunately, 30,000 of them are incarcerated in the Corcoran State Prison, so I doubt that they're going to be customers for the bullet train to nowhere. Nevertheless, that's the first $1 billion that's earmarked for the sale of carbon credits. That's in August. And then right after that, in November, we have the second auction. We're anticipating that about $3 billion additional dollars will come in from there. And already we're beginning to hear from none other than Henry Waxman, gosh, if this is generating so much money in California, maybe we should rethink introducing it nationally.
Exactly. I knew that that was going to be the next step, because all they can do is look for more money and more money and more money. And just sitting around, just anticipating how we can do this where we live too.
Now,
Unbelievable.
Isn't it amazing, Elise, that we haven't heard that much of this anywhere?
No, we have
I mean,
not.
We're talking about what these Hollywood people wore to pick up a statue, and that's capturing our news. And here's something that's going to impact. I called my friend Tom McClintock very early on, back in about 2008. I said, Tom, if you could, in a word, describe Assembly Bill 32, what would that word be? He said catastrophic.
Catastrophic. Okay, and we know it is, but here is my major problem. I don't know what to do as a person, just a one person here. What do you do to stop it, to change it, to halt it, to do something to help save California? Because it takes the jobs.
Absolutely.
The jobs are gone because of this. We can name off the industries right now. The trucking industry. Wow, and now gas is even higher.
Yep.
So let's just totally eliminate those trucks.
Wouldn't that be nice? I mean, the goal of this, if you get down to the nitty-gritty of it, what they want to do is take us all out of our private cars.
Yes, no
Public
cars.
transportation, you start hearing about public transportation projects. Let that be a little alarm bell, because hidden in there someplace is park your car and take public transportation. The second thing that the globalists believe is that how many square feet in your house?
Let's see, about 2,700.
And 2,700 square feet. Now, that's far too much.
Well,
You
yeah,
see-
it is for two people, I suppose.
Well, it will be easier
Oh,
to
yeah,
heat
no,
and-
it's not.
Exactly. It will be easier to heat and cool maybe about 800 square feet. And instead of having all of that land around you, they have what they call people stacking. So at the end of the public transportation terminals, the plan is to begin stacking apartment buildings and getting us to change our lifestyle and live in these buildings so we can either walk or bike or take public transportation everywhere, and then we don't pollute using our private cars, and we don't pollute heating and cooling our private homes.
Why does the United Nations think that they have the right to tell me, a fifth-generation American citizen, that I should live like that?
Well, there are always, in my mind, there are three enemies that our country is confronting right now. The first one is terrorism. We all know about
Yes.
that. The second one is creeping socialism.
Oh,
And we all know what that means.
Yes,
But
we do.
The third enemy is globalism. And these folks believe in a one world government, a one world economy. They believe that they can take your rights away from you by forming something called a regional bureau, a regional organization, a regional group. Find that someplace in the Constitution. It's not there.
it's not.
But
It's not.
I know there are going to be a lot of folks on your guest today who are involved in regional transportation bureaus, regional planning. That's a half a step down the road. On a global level, think of what they've done. The EU. That's
Right.
a regional organization. Take down the boundaries. Think of what happened back in 1997 in California. We became part of NAFTA. So as critical as you were talking about the trucks, as critical as our standards are for our domestic trucks, There are folks that can come right across the border from
Anytime.
Mexico, and I don't know about you, but I've been south of the border many times, and those puppies down there are Belgian black smoke.
Yes,
So
they are.
we may be trying to clean up the environment in California, but the globalists say, well, there's the key. See,
What are they doing in
environmentalists-
China, see? You know, do we have
Exactly.
any control over them?
Environmentalism is an international problem. It requires an international solution, and the folks at the UN are sitting right there, and they'll be more than happy to tell you how to do it.
Yes, they would. And you know, the thing that scares me about it is they all are so. There's been a lot of dishonest things happening in there, and it's kind of like the old bait and switch with the money. Let's say that we're going to give this money for children's programs, and then where does it go? The rich get richer.
Yeah, it's amazing when you go through the budget of the UN and realize that America is paying, there are 193 nations in the UN. America pays 22% of the general fund budget. There are approximately 110 organizations who pay 1% total. Total. And the rest is divided up amongst some of the larger economies. But, they have a standing army. There's 100,000 UN peacekeepers. We don't pay 22% of that. We pay 27% of the peacekeeping force. So, we're maintaining an army. We've got a government sitting back in New York, and they have tentacles all over the world, local operations, regional operations, and they're poised. All it takes is for us to not be vigilant and not be protective of our American freedoms. And those guys will gobble us up faster than you can say creeping globalism.
Creeping socialism,
And
creeping globalism.
Yes.
The whole thing about socialism is this, that sooner or later, whoever it was, Margaret Thatcher or
Margaret
somebody,
Thatcher,
the money is gone for all the people who have their hand out.
Socialism works until you wind up having spent all of somebody else's money.
Of somebody else's money. There you go. And I think that this whole thing of Solyndra, and that's another whole thing we can talk about here in
gosh.
California. When the government is involved in all these things, they don't ever do a really good job of it, do they?
Well, out here, right down the road from Palm Springs, as you go over toward the Colorado River, there's about 3,600 acres of 130,000 solar panels that are going to be put up in the desert. And it's an experiment that's never been tried before. They have 3 towers that they're putting up. There's each one 7 stories tall.
Tell us one more time exactly where this is.
It's the Ivanpah Project, and it's right over at the border along the I-10 corridor,
Okay.
over near the Colorado River between here and the border.
Okay.
This is a new experiment. They load these towers up with water, and then the solar panels produce heat. The heat turns the water into steam. The steam turns the generators, and that produces electricity. Nobody's ever figured out if this is really going to work, but we've got in excess of $1 billion invested in that project.
Oh yes, wouldn't we have $1 billion invested in it for
And
sure?
it's somebody
or more.
Somebody once said, Elise, it's $1 billion here and $1 billion there, and before you know it, you're talking about real money.
Yeah.
It's-
Yeah. And you know what? When your country has a deficit of $15 trillion and you keep coming up with these crazy cockeyed projects that don't half the time work, wow. Well, we're going to have to be coming right back. This is delightful talking to Warren Duffy here, and we'll be right back. I'm Elise Richmond, and this is K News 94.3.